criminality or dangerousness. This occurs when someone demonstrates belief in or otherwise acts on stereotypes that people of color are dangerous, untrustworthy, or likely to commit crimes or cause bodily harm, right? So this can also include concerns about being treated badly by people of color, like, maybe you're worried I'm going to be verbally aggressive against you, and that'll lead to emotional harm, so you avoid me or keep your distance or keep your guard up. And African American and Latino American males tend to be victims of these types of microaggressions most often, which can sometimes involve law enforcement being called on them for doing nothing bad at all. And these types of aggressions also are more common. Again, people with dark skin are more likely to get aggressed against in this way. Here's an example you may recall from the news last year. Wrong. Maybe I'll just be quiet, right? But being quiet is actually worse than trying to engage around these topics, because when you avoid, you're going to make your clients think that you're not interested in their lives or their identities, and that you're not skilled in having these conversations. And you may not be skilled, but you're not going to get skilled if you don't actually start having the conversations, right? So I think that's a really important takeaway message. So if you remember one thing, remember that. Don't avoid. And then I'm a behaviorist, so I always say don't avoid. All right. Now, when you're thinking about microaggressions, something I often hear is, well, what if my Black friend said it was okay? Well, not everyone agrees as to what constitutes a microaggression, and even people of color don't all agree. Does that make it okay then to freely commit microaggressions? Yeah. I think what you did was a little racist. That doesn't ever feel good. I've even been called out. I've been called a racist by a client that never even met me. So that was pretty hurtful. But first of all, you got to recognize there's a difference between being a racist, like the hood-wearing kind, and committing a racist act. So if the person pointed out one particular action, that doesn't mean that they hate you and they think that you're horrible, right? They're just explaining you did something hurtful, the same way they'd point out, hey, I tripped over the mess you left in the hall, or I don't like it when you tease me about my boyfriend. And that's the right thing to do. So that's an appropriate pro-social thing to do. So you as a therapist want to reinforce that. And chances are you are being called out over something relatively small, like a microaggression. Now, if somebody says that, and then ideally you want to educate the offender. So microaggressions are typically rooted in faulty information, which creates many opportunities to educate the person on how and why their actions were hurtful. So if we go back to the example about the student in the chemistry class, an educational response could be, something like, the majority of Arab Americans are completely against terroristic attacks. How would you feel if someone assumed something bad about you because of your race? So targets and allies could try appealing to the person's own values around inclusivity and equity, and even suggest how they might benefit from learning more about pathological stereotypes. And be sure to separate intent from impact and focus on the behavior, not the person. You can even say something like, I'm sure you meant that to be funny. If someone tells a racist joke, I'm sure you meant that to be funny, but here's why that particular